few weeks. In fact, I think I was gone 3 weeks, and I watched a couple of our services. Looks like y'all did just fine without me.
She struggled.
We're so thankful you're back. It's just so thankful.
Well, Mark had a couple of the classes, and I appreciate Mark doing that. Ricky, and then
It was very good.
it obviously studied for us. Gerald as well. Gerald's out meeting and greeting still. We'll thank him later. So, just a moment before I do get started. I want to tell you guys. I mean, I don't usually wear this shirt. This shirt's a little un-American. This shirt was my present from Ghana. They found the biggest Ghanaian they could find, and it wouldn't fit. So then they had this one made. I don't know what tablecloth they used, but I enjoy wearing it because it gives me great memories of what they're doing over there. The church there in Ghana, it impresses me. And Nathan and Jenny are doing such a great job at that school. They're just really doing well. Nathan, it looks like, is going to be changed from dean at the school. He's going to take a new position that's, I think it was called special advisor to the president. What they're going to try to do is develop a little better way of fundraising in the country, and have charged Nathan to start that. I told him he needed to come see you. That's what I told him to do. You'd share all your contacts with him.
I can ask him for money.
That's right. That's right. You know how to ask. And then the rest of the time, I think he'll be here with trying to basically develop relationships with other professors and folks that might want to go over there and teach as well. But President Sam, I met with President Sam. I met with their faculty, met with their rank and file, and tried to give each one of those a bit of a pep talk in terms of persisting in doing good. That's what I tried to persist in doing good. So today, I'm glad to be able to come back. I'm glad to teach. And in the chapter that we're in, Jerry's already talked about it. Y'all heard most of it read, which is chapter 18 out of Matthew. And I want to tell you, I've read chapter 18 out of Matthew many, many times. I know most of you all have as well. But I have never read it like I have read it in order to teach you how to read it. Because I've read Matthew 18 as snippets. It's almost like Jesus has a story here, he's got a story here, he's got a story here, and they all got bundled together. That was chapter 18, and there's some more stories to follow in chapter 19. I've always read it that way. In fact, you know, the business of the little children and all that, I read that just one little blurb and kind of left it. But now, I want you to teach it different because I think in my study, I learned to read it differently. I've read this chapter as a story where the apostles, the believers, the closest to believing who Jesus is, question how deep that was at this point in time. But one of them comes to Jesus and asks a question, and the question is, you know, how do we be great? And I would say you can ask yourself the same thing. Here in this church, how can you be great? And Jesus absolutely, Jesus nails him. Because Jesus explains to him, if you want to be great, you got to be like a little child. And all I can think of, with my deep love for little children and diapers, as any of y'all that know me, know I start liking children when they start to get 7 or 8 years old. You know, younger than that, they're for their grandmothers and their mothers and whatever, but don't give me a diaper. I've done enough. But Jesus says, you got to be like these kids, all right? And so Jerry spent some time out there talking about what that meant, and Jerry's emphasis there was on humility. and so that ends the story. No, it doesn't, because the rest of this chapter is very much about Jesus telling them what church life ought to be like. What church life, and when we say church life, that carries with it so much baggage that sometimes is right, sometimes it's wrong. So I'm going to say what family life is like in God. That's what this chapter is about. And so when we read it, and I'm going to read this thing through, okay? And as we get through, I want you to look, because to me, these ideas, I think, very much summarize what Jesus is telling these people, what your family life here in the church ought to be like. Let me get a little bit ahead of myself. It's okay. I think God put the church here. He put us here to act and emulate in such a way that people outside of the church, people that are interested, people that are seeking, could see what good life can be. I think that's what the church really ought to represent. The way that we work here in this church together ought to be exemplary for people outside who are seekers. Now look, I know good and well that there have been times in the church life that I have experienced, where I want to say, shame on us, boy, that doesn't look like God's people. We hadn't exactly done like what we needed to do. I think all of us can say that. And you know something, we're not a perfect group of people. We're not a perfect family like we aspire to be. But I will tell you, that's what God would really want out of us. God would really like for this church family right here, that when people would see this church family, when people would come in here, when people today, I would hope that they would have come here today and they see the way we honor our graduates, not just as your child or whatever, but as our children, as products of this church, okay? As kids that we've tried as a body here to put our money and our interest in them to try to make them what they need to be. I hope people can see us that way. We've had our failures, but I'm going to tell you something. We've done very, very well in many places as well, okay? But that's what we want to be. And that's what I would hope people would see in this service today. My, boy, they love their graduates. They love their graduates. They want good in their graduates. They want their graduates to be good, God-loving people. Right? So here, let me start here just a minute. 18. All right, you all already heard this one. I'm not going to skip it. I'm just going to read it fast. At the time the disciples came to Jesus saying, "Who then is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" He called a little child himself and set it before them and said, "Truly I say to you, unless you are converted and become like children, you shall not enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever then humbles himself," big word humble, "as this child, he is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever receives, one such child in my name and receives me, but whoever causes one of these little ones to believe in me to stumble, it is better for him to have a heavy millstone around his neck, go out and drown himself." Okay? Now, I heard Jerry mention this morning in the case of hyperbole. He was talking about cutting out your eyes, cutting out your arms. Talked about the hyperbole that's there. There's still hyperbole, but the hyperbole had some very real meaning. Jesus uses a lot of hyperbole. He uses a whole lot of hyperbole to get across a point. I don't think, quite honestly, Jesus wants anybody to go out and drown themselves, okay? But I'll tell you what, he's pretty clear. When you go messing with members of this church here who have humbled themselves, all right, then you're in real deep trouble with God. And the message that I get out of this one is humility. And that is that a family here, a family of God here, that loves each other, and for us to all get along like God intends us to get along, there's got to be an ounce of humility. Anybody have any problem with that? Anybody have any problem with that? Anybody here have any trouble with being humble? Pat, my oldest son, he was in they don't call them fraternities, whatever the social groups are at Harding, whatever they call themselves. The guys go out and cheer for themselves. What?
Social
Social clubs, whatever. Okay. They had an award that they gave to the most humble kid, okay? I've always wondered what that speech went like. In accepting this speech, in accepting this honor as the most humble here, I'd just like to thank everybody out there that's made me humble, that everyone that's humbled me, because I deserved it. Humility is tough. Humility is really tough. And humility is tough because our society, you know, he talked about how certain people have never looked at humility as being a great character, okay? And that's true. It continues. Humility right to this day is not considered a great characteristic. Go out and try to get a job somewhere. And walk in and as part of your job say, well, you know, I think there's probably some people who can do this better. Or go out and let's do an interview. Let's do an interview for medical school. I think I probably ought not be here. You know? You got to be very careful with how we look at humility and what humility represents. And humility, again, the best example of humility, it's that Philippians 2 passage where it talks about Jesus humbling himself. Jesus humbled himself, but he was what he was, right? Okay? You know, we've just got to grasp what we've been given and the gifts that we've been given. And the side of humility that matters is the side where you understand where that gift came from. When you go figure, when one of these graduates goes figuring that he's somebody because of something he is, boy, he needs to get himself figured out pretty quick. Every one of us are somebody because of the gifts that we have been given. And most of our gifts are given purely out of mercy and grace because we didn't deserve it, all right? That's why we're here. And when we have that kind of attitude when we're dealing with each other, life's a lot happier. You know, it's so much easier to talk to Joe here when I'm sitting in a chair next to him as opposed to standing here talking down to him. You just need to realize those things. Humility is a big deal. All right, verse 7. Woe to the world because of its stumbling blocks. It's inevitable that stumbling blocks come, but woe to that man through whom the stumbling block comes. Which is to say, life is full of stumbling blocks. All right, we're going to have them. Just got to sometimes recognize the one that's laying that stumbling block, he's in a mess. And if your hand or foot causes you to stumble, cut it off, throw it off, you cripple or lame, cut off your legs. If your eye causes you to stumble, pluck it out, throw it from you. It's better for you to enter life with one eye than two eyes. Be cast into fiery hell. See that you do not despise one of these little ones, for I say to you that their angels in heaven continually behold the face of my Father in heaven. For the Son of Man has come to save that which was lost. And again, what I would characterize here, I guess the negative side is don't be a stumbling block. There's a positive side to this too. What's the positive side? If you're not a stumbling block, then what should you be? Somebody. If you're not going to be a stumbling block, what do you need to be?
Encourage people.
You need to be encouraged. Look here, we're going to all, if we're a family, okay, and if we do a little bit more than come to church and stare at the back of somebody's head in front of us, okay, if we're going to have any interaction, that interaction is going to have some issues, isn't it? All right? Those issues can be positive, they can be negative. It's up to us as a family to try to make those positive as much as we can. We very much have interest in the other. I'm interested in you. When we have a conversation, a couple of practical things, have a conversation. You know, I'm not always just telling you all about my kids and how great my kids are. Sometimes I bother to ask you about yours. All right? Sometimes in any conversation, it's not just all about me. Sometimes I need to be interested in you. What'd you do today? Where have you been the last 3 weeks? It's so easy to be the life of the party and just sit there and talk the whole time about yourself, okay? And the ones that are good at it, people actually listen to. Most of us aren't very good at it. We get kind of sick of hearing about the other person. All right? Oh, no, you aren't that way. Yeah. No, I mean, we need to be interested in one another and how well we're doing, even our struggles, all those sorts of things. Verse 12, what do you think? Oh, by the way, this verse 11 is tricky. For the Son of Man has come to save that which was lost. How many of y'all have that verse? Verse 11 here. Huh? You got a note? It leaves it out. What does it leave it out? You got a defective Bible? Huh? Why does it leave that one out? So you got your 4 big codexes. The original, not the original, but as close to the original as we've got. Y'all know what those are? This little Bible lesson here, little trivia lesson. Codex Sinaiticus, Codex Vaticanus. I can't name those. And only one of those 4 is verse 11 in it. The other 3 don't include verse 11. So most scholars think that verse 11 was an interpolation. Some scribe added in it at some point in time. Verse 12. What do you think? If any man has 100 sheep and one of them goes off, does he not leave the 99 on the mountains and he goes and searches for the one that's got himself lost? And if it turns out that he finds it, truly I say to you, he rejoices over it more than the 99 that have gone astray. Thus it is not the will of your Father who is in heaven that one of these little ones should perish. What's the lesson right there? What's the lesson right there?
God cares about every one of us, where we're at.
What'd you say?
God cares about us no matter where we're at.
God cares about us. And what do you think? What do you make of what I read literally? It says, I'm going to paraphrase it. When God finds that person, or when the shepherd finds that one sheep, he's more happy about that sheep than the other 99. What do you think about that?
All right. He's God.
He's God. He can worry about that one and not worry about the rest. I don't read it that way. I read it to say, in a moment. Hey, here's the deal. We're all here. We all love each other. We're all good. One of you gets sick. We pay special attention to you, don't we? It's just a moment. The moment calls for it. Sometimes the moment calls to give special attention where special needs are. That's how I read this. Verse 15. And we all know this one. I taught this one a long, long time ago. This is the big one. This is the one on discipline and how to nail somebody in your church if they're not doing right. Okay? All right?
Go for it.
All right. If your brother sins, go and reprove him in private. If he listens to you, you won your brother. But if he doesn't listen to you, take 1 or 2 more with you in a bat, so that by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses every fact may be confirmed. And if he refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And if he refuses to listen to the church, then let him be a Gentile and tax gatherer. In other words, don't eat with him. Truly I say to you, whatever you shall bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. Again I say to you, if 2 of you agree on earth about anything that you may ask it, it shall be done for them by my Father who is in heaven. For where 2 or 3 have gathered together in my name, there I am in your midst. We quote that last verse a whole lot. What's the lesson right here? We can spend a lot of time on it. Is morality something that we need to hold up in our family? Is morality important? Is it important that we have a standard here of how we act? Sure. I think that's very, very important. You know, in our family, Margaret will not let you wear a baseball cap and eat at the house, eat at the table. I don't know. It just strikes me as kind of old, but that's where she is. My son-in-law Greg wants to wear a baseball hat every time. My grandson, his son does too. It just embarrasses me for Margaret to tell him to take that hat off. But there's a standard that she's got there at the table that's real, okay? And we've got a standard as believers in Christ ourselves that we need to uphold, all right? It's important. Now, when people fall below that standard, it's also important how it is that we let them know. And Jesus takes, I think it's Deuteronomy 18. Deuteronomy 18, a lot of this is talked about in the Old Testament. But Jesus makes it clear that most, and I will say, most disagreements or most situations where somebody has not quite lived up to who they need to be, they ought to really be handled one-on-one. Ought to really be handled one-on-one. And I'll tell you, the person that handles that situation ought to be a person that has a relationship with the person. You know, I'll just tell you, when somebody that I don't know comes to me and starts criticizing my behavior or whatever, I immediately, my piloerector muscles get my hair standing up. Roger, go look that up. It does. It'll make the hair stand up on your neck. But when somebody comes and talks to me that I know, I've got a relationship with, and I love, okay? You know something? If that relationship is as deep as it ought to be, we ought to be able to talk about anything. All right?
Meet me after church and we will.
My piloerector muscles are up. I'm in a fight or flight mode.
We said tickets for that, y'all.
Oh, boy, I'll tell you what. It's a bad day. Yes, ma'am.
But that person that knows you,
Yeah.
those last two things on your list,
These two.
that's how they're going to approach you, with grace and mercy, because they know you. And they know that whatever it is that's going on that you need to be talked to about, they're gonna know how to approach you. And they're gonna do that in such a way that your hair's not standing up. And you're not just hearing them, you're listening to them. Because those are not the same thing.
Truth is always truth. But truth is only heard when it's done at the right time, in the right way, in the right spirit, by the right person. Otherwise, I don't care what your message is or how true it is. Chances are it's not going to be heard. So think that. And you have responsibility. You have responsibility. If you have a relationship with somebody and you love that person, you have a responsibility. If you see something that's not right, don't just forget it. Go talk to them. In fact, chances are you got something confused anyhow. But clear that up. Clear that up. Don't leave that between you. Okay, see you later.
Okay.
Forgiveness, verse 21. Then Peter came and said to him, Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me and I forgive him? Up to 7 times? Now, behind the story here is Jewish thinking at that time, Jewish teaching was you needed to forgive them 3 times. And again, that's built out of a scripture in Deuteronomy. I think Deuteronomy 8. You can look these up when you're interested in reading Deuteronomy. But basically, they're holding up 3 times. And here, Peter, who is basically showing his deep spiritual maturity, he decides, well, not 3 times, we'll go 7 times. And Jesus, there's something about Jesus and Peter going on, okay? You know, Peter, I picture Peter has always kind of got this kind of look to him, all right? And it's kind of like Jesus, he just don't miss a time. Just say, settle down, Peter. Peter, you don't quite have this guy. You don't quite have this.
That's where the humility comes in.
That's right. Peter, you need a little bit of humility here, all right? So Jesus says to him, I don't say to you up 7 times, but to 70 times 7, which is, in Jewish language, that's many times, okay? For this reason, the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a certain king who wished to settle accounts with his slaves. And when he began to settle them, he went to a guy that owed him 10,000 talents. Now, what I understand a talent is, and some of the NIV puts in there something about gold, but the talent was basically what you could expect to make over about 20 years at a usual wage, okay? So when it talks about this guy owes him this kind of money, he owed him billions, all right? He can't begin to pay it back. This guy can't begin to pay him back. So, and when he had begun to settle them, is brought to them who owed him 10,000. But since he did not have the means to repay, the Lord commanded him to be sold along with his wife and children, all that he had, and repayment to be made. So he's going to work out a payment plan, which involves some slavery. The slave therefore fell down, prostrated himself before him, saying, have patience with me, and I'll repay you everything. Key word there is patience. And the Lord of that slave felt compassion and released him and forgave him of the debt. Pretty nice story, isn't it? So now let's read about this slave. So the slave went out, found one of his fellow slaves who owed him 100 denarii. Now 100 denarii, what I read, that's not much. That's kind of a piddling amount, okay? That's kind of a tip that some of you cheapos would leave at a restaurant. And he seized him and began to choke him, saying, "Pay back what you owe." So this fellow slave fell down, began to entreat him, saying, "Have patience with me, and I'll repay you." He was unwilling, however, but went and threw him in prison until he should pay back what was owed. So when his fellow slaves saw what had happened, they were deeply grieved, came and reported to the Lord all that had happened. Then, summoning him, his Lord said to him, "You wicked slave, I forgave you all that debt because you entreated me. Should you not also have mercy on him, your fellow slave, even as I had mercy on you?" And the Lord, moved with anger, handed him over to the torturers. That word torturers, that might be a little bit strong, the word.
Jailers.
You work it at what now?
Probably jailers.
Well, it can be used, it can be translated interrogators, okay? Until he should repay all that was owed to him, all right? Oh, now think about this for a moment. You're throwing a guy in jail so he can pay you back. There's a lot of work in that jailhouse. Jail fees, they pay good. So shall my heavenly Father also do you, to each one of you who does not forgive his brother from your heart. So this is talking about relationships with each other once somebody has met with failure. The first thing there is forgiveness. Did I write forgiveness up here? Here's forgiveness right here. Reconciliation comes in there. That's you're talking with each other. You kind of work. You got to work things out, right? I left out this is a business of accountability. We clearly have accountability with each other, right? It's not you're not out by yourself here. By the way, we got a real problem with our culture entering who we are as a church here in terms of individualism. A lot of people are satisfied to come to church, to give their alms to God, to sing, even participate, and then they're out of here and may never have any kind of relationship or anything with anybody the whole time. They're just on their own. They're all part of the church on the plain. The church on the plain. They all get on the airplane in Nashville, Tennessee. They all get their seat, and they're all flying to Los Angeles. I was going to say Las Vegas there for a minute, but Los Angeles. And they get off and they walk off. And they had the right idea in mind. They were going to go to Los Angeles, but they didn't do it together, or maybe they did, but probably didn't. We don't want to be a church on a plane. We need to be a church not of individuals, but a church of ones that share with each other. So very important to share with each other. There's so much that we have to offer one another. There's so much we have to gain from one another. I was sitting up there today, and I'm thinking about those kids getting ready to graduate and their parents. And I think a lot of people have the misguided idea that somehow or another the kids are ready to graduate from college, graduate from high school, so their parenting is kind of over. Well, you forget that. Right? It's going to stay. It's going to continue. As I said this morning, you're a parent till you die. That's not going to go away. Truth be known, you might get parented a little bit before you die too. And then we got this idea of forgiveness. Bottom line is forgiveness, and there are those. I have a real problem with this. I find people that do the same thing over and over and over again. I find them very trifling. I find them very disgusting. I can get down on those people pretty quick. Are y'all that way? Am I the one that feels that way? And Jesus says, forgive them 70 times 7. Come on, Jesus. Let's think about this just for a moment. Surely there's some consequences along the way. Yeah, I think there's consequences. I think there's consequences, and I think there's consequences that have to be lived out. I'm not sure forgiveness dismisses consequences. Are you all? What do you think of that? Does forgiveness just do away with any consequence? It's pretty hard. So I don't think it's saying that, but there is a very real sense where when I need to forgive a person, that in my forgiveness is entailed a handing it over to the Lord. Can I say that? Is that, am I trying to go through the back door on this? I've forgiven you, but not really, because I know God's going to take care of you later. I don't know. I'm just telling you. I don't know how to teach that part. I don't know how to teach. I don't know how to. I can't teach some things that I don't know my own self. I really have a hard time with this. Somebody give me a little help with this. How do you handle this?
You have to have the right attitude.
What's the right attitude, Blaine?
You
You know,
have
at
to
some
be
point in
willing-
time, I'm tired of telling you.
You have to be willing to forgive them.
Huh?
You have to be willing to forgive them.
Yeah. Yeah.
According to this passage, the king was the one who was willing to suffer the loss in forgiving the debt.
Yeah.
And we don't like it, but what he's asking us to do is being willing to suffer the loss in order to maintain the unity of the relationship, which I don't like.
Yeah.
I don't particularly like that, that's what it says, but that's what that says to me.
Well, then who are we to judge what they should get for their actions? That's up to God. All we can do is forgive as Jesus forgave us.
You know, I agree with you and I disagree with you. I think who are we to judge? I think we judge stuff every day. What we don't do is judge people eternally, okay? So I would draw a little line between judging what I see happening in everyday life and the fact and the issues and subsequent consequences. I think that's something I probably need to do. But what I don't need to do is get in the business of judging their heart, where they came from, and all that other stuff that I don't know, and somehow or another condemning somebody to hell when I ain't God, right? Is that fair to say? Yeah, Mark?
Steve, this is a very interesting topic, and when I think about the consequence part that you've mentioned, there's a part of me that says, yeah, there's probably some truth in that, but there's also some truth in that if we say, yeah, I forgive you, but there's still consequences, to me, there's still a little punitive involvement there. And that says I haven't really truly forgiven, if there's a punitive nature to it. So
Yes.
Jesus on the cross
Yeah.
forgave the thief that was there. The thief got to the cross by what he had done previously. So if you want to think about consequence, that's that. But Jesus held no consequence
Yeah.
in his forgiveness. And also, if we were to stop in this story where we had the servant who owed the 10,000 talents.
Yeah.
If you stop the story right there, if he had not held the punitive nature against his fellow servant, but he had just accepted the forgiveness, would there have been consequences? He would have been free of that.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah, Mark.
hard to think through.
Yeah. These are Jesus' teachings.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, they're right up here, and it's so hard sometimes for us, it's so hard for me to get there. I want to. You know, I have quit loaning people money. I'm not talking about somebody comes in, they need a deal and go to the bank or what. I'm talking about, I have quit loaning people money when somebody says they need $20, they need $25 or what. You get those people, okay? Quit loaning. Give it to them. And you know, if they want to pay it back, they need to have at it. But just sometimes we lay traps for people by asking them, by giving them a loan. They no more can pay you back than the man, so don't even call it that.
So
Just give it to them.
You've removed the punitive side of it.
I've removed the punitive side in a legal kind of way so I can deal with it. I'm not sure my heart's there, but my brain, that's how my brain has to deal with it. I'm working on it, Mark.
Well, Jesus knows your intent.
Yes, Jesus does. Oh, forgive me, Jesus. And help me in this conversation with Celia later. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
I've been seeing he was very willing to receive forgiveness. He wanted to receive the mercy. He wanted to receive all of those good things. But because he did not belong to the king, he wasn't honoring the king. And because of that, because he was focused on himself, he was not able to give the forgiveness or the grace or the mercy or all of those things. He could receive them, but he couldn't give them. And I think the same is true when we belong to God. From other people, we're really happy to receive all these things that we think are due all humans. All humans should, have this. But unless we belong to God, we're not able to truly give those.
That's really a good point that you're raising. Romans 8, it talks about people who don't have the Spirit, who can't love God, don't know how to love God because they can't love God because they don't have His Spirit.
Right.
So we got to all be thankful and believe the Spirit of God dwells in us that allows us to be better than we would otherwise be. We can't be like Bonhoeffer described those people with cheap grace. They're all willing to take it. Oh, let me have the grace. But none of them understand that grace had a price. And grace has expectations. Grace and mercy. Grace and mercy. And I think humility, I won't throw humility in it, but grace and mercy is what, as a family, we've got to run on to say good. Okay? Heard it said, mercy is when you don't give somebody something that deserved it. Grace is when you get something and you didn't deserve it. I think that's pretty neat. You like that? I think that's a pretty neat little thing. Okay, I've heard a bell. I'm out. I'm done. For those of you all celebrating graduation, just keep on rolling with the fun. I hope to see you guys next week.